Hi, everybody. Welcome. We're doing a fireside chat this evening. So hello, everybody. And today I have, by grace of the weather gods, I'm here with you today after much hemming and hawing about the ice storm. But I'm glad to be able to introduce Denise Williams, who is a lovely romance author of many books now. And Denise, welcome to the show. Welcome to YouTube. How you doing?
Thank you for having me. And yes, the weather gods indeed. I flew through the snowstorm in the Midwest yesterday and luckily kind of skirted the worst of it. So
Oh boy.
here.
Yes. So when I look through your website, there's lots of Iowa information. I don't know much about Iowa weather except that it's pretty flat, so it's pretty continental, hot summers, freezing winters. Is that about right?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely get all the seasons, so that's lovely. We are in an area that is pretty flat, so we get a lot of wind, and that
Okay.
so it's a whole thing. But we had a very, very mild winter up until a week ago when we got, I don't even know how many inches of snow, 15 or 16 so far, maybe 17. We got a few inches last night, all in like a week and a half. And it's just bitterly cold. So it's wonderful to talk about hot writing with, warm people.
Yes. So I think you first came to my attention because of Mighty Blaze, and you're a debut author with Denny Bryce. And after that, it was actually another YouTube channel that recommended your debut book, How to Fail at Flirting.
Lovely.
That made me read it. And then I was like, oh, I should really read this, and loved it. And then read the sequel. And then you've got 8 or 9 or however many books in 3 years, which is incredible.
Yeah, my 9th one just came out. So it's been a wild couple of years.
Yes. Hot, steamy. Can you give us your, I don't know, pitch about where you fit in the sort of romance market in case people are looking for open door, closed door? I don't know.
Sure. All of mine are pretty open door, varying degrees of explicit, but definitely all open door, hot and steamy on the page. But they have that, and they are love stories, and I think they're funny. I think I'm pretty funny.
Yes.
But
yes.
beyond that, I would say all of my books have some level of touching on social issues, but more than that, highlighting people or characters who I think feel very real in terms of those social issues. So we are seeing a madcap rom-com and somebody falling in love and meeting the love of their life in a weird circumstance, and it, being lovely and sweet and romantic. But we're also seeing that those are people who are like us, who are maybe touched by trauma, who are dealing with workplace insecurity, who are trying to figure themselves out, who are, any number of things. And I think that that's really where my books fit nicely. So I think it's all the heat and steam of classic romance with, I think, a lot of the and I hate saying women's fiction because I don't think that's a real genre, and
right.
a lot of patriarchy embedded in that. But I think what we get in a lot of those books is the developmental stories of women and non-binary people sometimes. And I think that's what you get in my books too.
Awesome. And so the latest one you introduced was technically yours, which just came out last month, right?
Yeah. Here, I'll hold it up, and it will cover my little Amazon box over here that's in the corner on my couch. But yeah, technically yours just came out in December, and that is book number 9. And it takes place in the world of a tech nonprofit. So the nonprofit, excuse my keyboard, nonprofit is looking at getting kids from marginalized identities into tech and coding. And then our heroine is the executive director, and the hero is a board member. So it's got a workplace piece, but it's also a second chance romance. This man is down bad for this woman. And so if you love kind of fools in love, that's these folks.
Awesome. And so you've mentioned a few tropes that you kind of throw out there, they're tools that we use in story making, right?
Sure.
And I just wanted to point out to people that you had a TikTok, as this is ages ago now, that was going through the different tropes and yes or no. And that was one of the inspirations for a panel, because when I was first starting on TikTok, the smash or pass thing was new. I was what is this? And so I sort of imported it to YouTube and had some friends on, and we did smash or pass with romance tropes, mystery tropes, and
I love it.
Yeah, we had some fun and fantasy as well. And so we like took some of those and talked about them and chatted like yay or nay with our little signs, and it was really fun. So yeah.
I last year my book that came out was called Do You Take This Man? And it was enemies to lovers, and it was around weddings. And so I did a lot of games of bang, marry, kill. Folks are probably calling other things, but and we did it with tropes, and that was so much fun until we brought up Secret Baby. Oh. And then I'm surprised I didn't get kicked off Instagram because everybody wanted to kill that trope, but then it shows up in the feed, and you're like, no, don't say that. Keep the secret baby alive. We just don't have to read it. So lesson learnld.
Yeah, a little dicey when you get to like words and the algorithm and like what you're saying to the algorithm.
All of that, yes.
Yeah. All right. Well, I also want to say hello to the people in the chat. So basically the format of these fireside chats is that we do little creative exercises. And so I think we're going to do some flash fiction, either verbally with tropes or just like writing, whichever you feel like. I think we'll give it 15 minutes because that's the fireplace timer that I have up and ready to go. And then come back and ask a couple more questions. Hopefully we'll get some in the chat, and then we can have some audience interaction, and then do a second little exercise, and then sort of finish up for the night and pat ourselves on the back that we did some solid creative stuff on a Friday evening.
Love it.
But yeah, we had some friends here from other channels, like hitting the like button. Love it. Anita, who was on the mystery panel. People write in more than one genre, so sometimes they can like play in more than one field. Shannon is here. Hello. And I put up the link to that panel that we did a couple years ago with the tropes because it was super fun. I thought I'd call back to that. I did have one other question that you made me want to ask before we start, which was when I looked over your bio, it said you have a PhD. So I was like, what did she do before she did writing? Did you ever consider a different genre before you went into romance and like love stories?
Well, no, but also yes. So I always loved to write short stories, really, really awful angsty poetry that I learned was still on the internet 20 years later. Thank you. Longevity of the internet.
Okay.
Oh, I mean, there was one that compared grief to a thermos of green Jello. It was truly awful. But, I always loved to write and just put creative things down. And I did NaNoWriMo a couple of times. I finished it once, a book that has to this day not been edited and probably never will be. But I never, it was never something I took seriously. And I've always loved to read everything. But when I started my graduate work, both my master's and then my PhD in education, that was all I really had time for. So, and I finished that in 2015. And then I was a researcher by training. My initial first drafts were very much like research papers. And the formula there is I'm going to tell you what I told you.
Right.
What I'm going to tell you. I'm going to tell you why I'm telling it to you. I'm going to tell it to you. And then I'm going to tell you what I just told you.
Right.
And that doesn't work in fiction. So I had a lot of a steep learning curve. But so that was what I was writing. I was writing research articles, and I studied student veterans and student development and DEI awareness development, diversity, equity, and inclusion.
Yeah.
So that was really where my work was, and where I was writing was in a lot of statistics. And I still love to write that. It's a different way to tell a story. But I started writing romance when I was a new mom. My son was about 3 months old. I was in the middle of a huge research project. I'd just gone back to work, and I felt buried in momming and life, and feeling like I was giving all of myself to other things. And I wanted something that was just for me. And I don't know if other folks can relate to that, but I just sat down to write a short story or just something. And it was going to be a funny story about ex-boyfriends. And it turned into my debut novel. And honestly, I just kept going back every night when my son went to bed, and it was my happy place. And, writing is a job now. Like, it's a book, they're under contract, all the deadlines, all of that. But in a lot of ways for me, writing still feels like that escape, that place I can go to connect to a part of myself. And so that is, I don't know, I think that's kind of a lovely way to come to writing. It also meant doing a lot of studying because, again, my background isn't in writing fiction, it's in writing research. So I always joke with folks once they get through my backlist, if they want, something else, they can go read all my academic articles. There's significantly less kissing, a lot more statistics.
That
So
seems like it would come into handy for a little bit of the setting for how to fail at flirting, because like academic setting and like the sort of jockeying for position, the department politics.
yeah,
Like
I've
policies.
I've written a few academics, and so I always give them a full research agenda. And
Nice.
I also really like, and in 2016, when I started writing that book, higher education was and really is under a lot of attack in terms of, I think a lot of rhetoric about what professors do and what they don't do and what higher education does and doesn't do. And it's a whole thing. And that continues to this day. But I also really wanted to just show a professor as they are. They are human people. And yes, they teach and they research, but they are also, humans doing the best they can. And that's who makes up universities. And it was really important for me to show, particularly a woman of color in that setting, and to talk just a little bit about academia and all the other social issues in the midst of this fun love story, because I've worked in higher education for 20 plus years now and have seen that. And I really wanted to show that side of things too.
Well, then shout out to your fan who turned me on to the first book, which is Cynthia at Book Whimsy, because she is a woman of color professor of women's history, I believe, or French history, one of the two. Or
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So she sold me on the book. So what would you like to do for the first sprint? Do you want to do written? Do you want to do verbal? I'm not sure how the verbal would work, but feel free to, like, if you've done this before, tell me how you prefer it, or we could just make it up as we go.
We can make it up as we go. Something I've done a lot in other spaces is just making a story up as we go and figuring it out with a prompt or something. But I'm happy to write by the fireside if that's what other folks want to do. I'm super flexible.
Okay, well, I've got a list of tropes. So I was thinking, like, if we wanted to pick two and then like wind them together and see what happens.
Sure.
Like kind of like Exquisite Corpse, that thing where you write a sentence and then turn it to the other person and then they write a sentence and you develop the story.
Okay, all right.
So from my list from last year, I was gonna say Grumpy Sunshine. That'll be my pick. And what would you want to go with that?
Mafia.
Okay. Okay. All right. So I will put that into a banner, and then I'll let you start with the first sentence, and I'll set this up for the screen. So give me just a minute. You said you hated Mafia. This should be interesting.
I actually don't normally. I don't write Mafia, but yeah, it's fun. It's a fun balance.
Okay. So that's what we can work on. And if you want to start the first round, I'll give you, like, I don't know, a minute or two, and then you can say whatever your first line is, and then we could just trade off with a minute in between.
Sure. Well, first line, I can start pretty quick because I can go pretty easy here.
Okay, this is going to be more difficult for me, obviously. Okay, go ahead, though.
I didn't expect so much blood.
I also didn't expect to look up from the puddle of blood and see salmon-colored pants and a cardigan around the shoulders of Mr. Alexander.
He looked bored, brushing a piece of lint from his cuff, and said in a dull voice, "This is going to take a while to clean up."
It was at that point that he noticed me peering over the customer service half door with a look of shock on my face.
Open quote. Don't act like you've never seen this before, period. Get out from behind there and help me with the knife.
Sure thing, Mr. Alexander. Right away, sir, I brazened out, slipping through the door and stepping closer hesitantly.
You know, he said, if you're going to take over your father's role, comma, you cannot be so squeamish about these things.
Right, I said, keeping all the inner turmoil over how I intended to do things differently from my father to myself for the moment. Let me just get my gloves.
When I earned my graduate degree in art history, I thought I'd left this life of dead bodies and grumpy consigliere behind, but I was wrong.
We didn't specify if this was age gap, too. Okay. Oh, should throw that in there.
I also just learned that I don't know how to spell consigliere, not even a little bit.
I noted with some satisfaction that the study of art had enabled me enough knowledge of anatomy to pull the knife cleanly out of the hip socket where it was installed and packed it into the black case, so many of which I'd seen growing up.
I felt his eyes on me, and the hairs on the back of my neck rose, wondering what he thought of my work and if he approved.
I turned to Mr. Alexander, case in hand, and said brightly, "Now, if I recall correctly, it's your responsibility to stash the body, right?" Bless you. Shall I go down and run interference?
He looked bored again, and my heart sank when he turned from me and spoke over his shoulder, saying, "We have people for that." Come now. Your father's waiting.
Oh, the father's still alive. Oh, okay. I dropped the black case into my backpack and started for the service elevator, feeling him fall into step behind me.
Blah, 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 blah. There are moments in life when everything goes right, and the elevator arrives immediately as you step up to it with a bloody knife in your backpack. But this was not one of those moments, and I waited for the music to come on as we waited for the car to arrive.
Since asking about the Red Sox would not get me very far, I attempted a different question that might be more in his line of interest.
So, have you been watching The Real Housewives?
I expected a scathing sideways look, but he kept his eyes front, waiting for the doors to open, and all I felt was a woof of air as he attempted not to laugh.
Our honeymoon was off to a very rocky start.
Oh no! Oh my gosh. Okay. We have like 4 minutes left, but I think that's a great ending line. Well done. Oh my gosh.
You know, mafia rom-com is a hard line to walk, which I think we did it.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah, there's lots of TV shows I feel like to pull from that have that vibe of like in between
A little bit.
dismemberment and like humor. So
You know, the Butcher and Blackbird came out recently, maybe in August, and I read that recently, and I thought it was really well done. It's by Bryn Weaver, and it is a rom-com about two serial killers. It kind of reminded me of somebody put like Dexter from the old show Dexter, and then had them fall in love with another Dexter. And then made it funny. So it's just it's kind of an interesting way to look at it, because the people themselves and what they're doing is very dark, but the love story is straight out of a rom-com, so it's very light. And the author, I thought, did like a really beautiful job weaving those together, and it was a really fun read.
Nice. The Butcher and Blackbird?
Butcher and Blackbird, yeah, by Bryn or Brynny Weaver.
Okay.
It's very explicit. It is very violent. Like they don't shy away from the serial killing or the other activities, but I just thought it was a really interesting way to get at it, kind of like what we were doing.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Awesome. There's because what I see, I mean, overview, more the high level view, what I expect is for people in media to be more okay with violence, gratuitous violence, and less okay with, explicit sex scenes, because that's how American society is, and it's just sort of this weird thing. But like putting them together, hey, marriage made in heaven. Actually, I had a question that was going to be about, well, it's kind of like balancing two things that's similar to what you just brought up. So, um, here's the question. What's your approach on tropes? Because when I think about two books of yours that I've read so far, I think about, yes, there's the element of like a familiar, an expectation, and there's going to be a happy ever after because it's a romance. But there's this really fleshed out life story of a character and sort of in-depth analysis of the angst of like the decision is not assumed. They have to really fight to get to it. So whether it's forced proximity or fake dating, or you meet someone at a bar and the next night they're your boss, something like that, you don't have it be like obvious. It's like a fight and you have to go through those emotions with them, which I really like. How do you pick that? How do you find the balance? If you got any advice or insight on that.
I think in romance especially, I think in a lot of genre fiction tropes are there. That's not just to romance, but in romance it's interesting because I think readers are more widely, and maybe this is just my angle or perspective, but readers are very aware of tropes, and I think maybe more so than in other genres, readers are very into micro level and the details of tropes and deconstructing those. And again, I read romance, I'm in the romance world, but I see that. But I also think that for me, if the book is the trope, I tend not to be very interested in it because I think a trope is a guidepost. It's a way to frame how things are going to happen. And so and I think that's sort of a challenge, at least in romance. And again, this may be true in other genres, but folks are so into tropes that is how we're advertising books. That's how we're promoting books. And in some instances, that's how we're writing books. And again, if it's just a trope, that doesn't really tell you anything other than that trope is in it. You don't know that
Right.
character development, the setting that's going to make it interesting, the way the conflict is going to come about. And so for me, I kind of know the tropes I'm playing with sometimes. Sometimes they sneak up on me. But more so than that, I really think about the characters first. That's almost always where I start, is with my characters. And usually it's one or the other, hero or heroine, that I start with. And then I think about who would be the person who would challenge and lift that person more than anyone else.
Mm.
Who
Oh,
who is going to be somebody who will be a source of conflict for them, a source of joy, and vice versa. And then it's thinking out what situation could I put them in that would be the biggest test for these
okay.
people.
Yeah.
So, for example, in Technically Yours, that's a second chance romance. It's a workplace romance. I already had included these characters in another book, so we sort of know them already. And we have a lovesick hero who's a recovering people pleaser, and a heroine who is dead set for a lot of reasons on protecting her career at the cost of romance and other
Mm.
things. And so when this people pleaser is so enamored with this woman who has really good reasons to hold off on love to protect her career, there's so much opportunity for all of this conflict and tension and joy and love. And then the fact that it's second chance romance is really how they got together. That it's workplace is just adding fuel to the fire. And so I don't know if that's answer your question, but for me, it really, I know some of the tropes at the beginning that I'm probably going to work with, but it always has to fit the character. For me, it's not, I'm going to write a marriage of convenience. Who could I
Right.
have get married?
Right.
I want to write this book. And why would marriage of convenience fit what I want this character's growth to go through?
Because
And
like,
in that
okay, so
way, I think
definitely leans, yeah, definitely leans on character and full development. But then how do you see scenes affecting that? Do you see scenes and like turning points of the structure and then sort of bring it together? Because like there's certain scenes that jump out at me. Like I guess it's the inciting event for Fastest Way to Fall, where she's in the stairwell and she's calling, and I just like like that feeling when you look back at the end of the story and you're like, oh my God, that was such like a trust moment and like it came through. And why doesn't that happen in real life? Like,
right? Wes is the hero in The Fastest Way to Fall, and I think he is a fan favorite of all of my my heroes. I think that couple, maybe more than any other one, I hear about all the time. And that's actually the book where you learn about Pearl and Cord. Cord is his business partner, and Pearl is
right.
Wesley's assistant in that book. So
Okay.
that's where you first meet them. But no, sometimes I think with tropes at the scene level, there are expectations that people have. So I'll go back to Marriage of Convenience because I'm working on one right now, and so it's fresh in my head.
Okay.
Everybody wants that moment where oftentimes it's a hero who just says, "My wife," and it's the first time, and you're like, "Oh, he's claiming her." I don't know. It's like something people love in the genre. It's a trope expectation.
Okay.
Or in fake dating, the first time they have to kiss or show intimacy, or in A Grumpy Sunshine, where we first see the grump kind of smile or break down their walls or something. Like there are these moments that, because of the trope, there's sort of genre expectations, and they're usually the moments that give you the fuzzies. They give you that special moment. At those plot points, like what you talked about in The Fastest Way to Fall, that really didn't have anything to do with the micro tropes or anything, so much as it was a really meaningful moment for both of them for different reasons. And so we saw character motivations coming together with relationship arc structure to kind of give you this dramatic intersecting of these two people.
Yeah, it's so interesting because, like, if I went back and tried to think, well, he's doing his first transgression in terms of his values, and she's doing her first, like, trust. So, like, one's down and one's up. Like, how do we know where this is going? And it's so complex and wonderful.
And, that is, I think that's the joy of, you see it in romance often, but in other genres too, when you're writing about a relationship and you're writing dual point of view, is, in a perfect world, our arcs sync up with our romantic partner, but in the real world, that never happens. So, you're on different journeys, and it's, for me, I really want each of those characters to go on their own journey. They're often not even in the same direction. Like they're doing this thing, but then their relationship is building along the way as it encapsulates both of them. So I do think that makes, I think anytime you're writing about two people's development, it's just an added layer of challenge and complexity, and just thinking about not only how does this relationship build, but how do these two individuals, reach kind of their journey.
That's awesome. So I will have like romance subplots in my historical fiction, but I've never had dual POV with both sides of a relationship. It's always been like family and they have relationships on the side. So I'm like, I've wanted to, and I kind of think about it. I'm like, I don't know how to do it. Like it's just like sustaining the tension and the structure. I've read so much of it and loved it, but I just sit down and I'm like, it just sounds cheesy to me. I don't know how to approach it in my head.
It's challenging because you have to really think about, we know our characters so well and what they need and what they want. And then it's merging that with what somebody else needs and wants. And then you both want them to meet that for each other, but also not meet that for each other.
Yeah.
They have to work toward it. And so I do find that I enjoy that. My first book is single point of view, and that really works for that book, I think, in How to Fail at Flirting, because it really is, it's a love story, but it really is her story. But all my other books are dual point of view. And I really enjoy that, like getting into two different people's heads and kind of building that, to me, is a lot of fun.
Nice. Okay, well, let's get ready for our second round, and maybe we'll do some writing for this one and just sort of have a quiet crackling fire. We can work on the work in progress. So for me, I started working on like the series outline. So I've got different generations I'm working on. You mentioned you're working on something with A Marriage of Convenience, and that's all you can say at this moment, right?
Yep. And actually, I just sent a draft off to my agent, so I'll work on something else because I'm waiting on feedback after that one.
Nice. So here's my question before we start off on that, which was, I'm in a bit of a weird spot recently, and I'm like, how do you summon this spark? I mean, you told us about how you started writing and like it was a pivot for your career and it was a place to show up for yourself and just yourself. Like now that you're in it full time, how do you sort of get into that groove, especially with something that's so emotional, but also a discipline? Is it the routine that helps? Is it something else?
I actually don't write full time, so I still work full time.
Oh, okay.
At a fairly demanding job at the
Wow.
university, and that is more because I still love that. I still love that work. It's what
Mm.
my degrees are in. It's what I've spent the last 20, 25 years doing and studying and learning and growing. And so, I still work full time. So writing
Holy
for
cow.
me is still, in some ways it is the escape, it is the fun. But yeah, structure really helps. For a long time, I had a writing group that met every Sunday for a few hours over Zoom. We started through COVID and we're not writing so much anymore, but I really loved that because it was the accountability piece and it was truly get on Zoom. We chatted more than we probably should have, but chatted,
Yeah,
catch
yeah.
up, and then everybody
Encouragement.
gets to sprint for an hour, 45 minutes, and we come back. And I love that. I love the accountability. I love the community. I love that I'm going to have to report my word count. So if I veer off and get lost on an Instagram hole, I'm going to have to own that. So that really helps. And then I'm pretty good at when I travel a lot for work. So on planes and airports, I do a lot of writing there. When my son goes to bed, I'll, sit on the couch with my husband and plot out words. And so for me, it's still, I dream sometimes oh, what if I did do this full time and I could write during the day and when I wasn't in a different time zone. But for me, that really works. And I'm lucky that I'm a pretty fast drafter. So I'm able to kind of get those words out quickly. But I think it's challenging. I had a really, really tough year this year with not with writing so much, but with work. And I put out 3 books in 2023 and 4 in 2022, and some of those were novellas, but that was a lot. And my
Yeah.
creativity really was taking some hits. And my confidence, honestly, was taking some hits because of things that were going on in my professional life.
Mm.
And it was hard to sit down and write and to look at the words and say, these are great words, or even just I wrote something, but I didn't see the joy in it. And,
Yep.
I think that happens to all of us because you cannot turn on creativity like a tap. You can sit down and write and put words on the page for sure. And sometimes we have to do that. But I also think it's great to be able to tap into those things that bring you joy. For me, sometimes that's stopping and writing something totally different. I love writing hot, steamy scenes. I love writing them in my books, but I just think they're fun to write. Other writers I know kind of go into a fugue state when they do that, but it's kind of like writing a fight scene. It's action, it's emotion, it's
Yeah.
quick, maybe not quick, but it's I love writing those scenes, particularly in a romance where there's communication embedded in the steamy scenes that may not be verbalized yet. And
Mm.
I especially see this in my book in How to Fail at Flirting. The heroine is healing, she's moving past a abusive relationship and finding herself, and so the things she's able to communicate in that intimate setting are different than what she might be able to vocalize. And anyway, I love writing those. So when I'm really stuck, I go and write some random steamy stuff and just get some new ideas and kind of free up my mind. And
By the way, the bonus content with extra steamy scenes is available on Denise's link tree.
it's all free because I love writing it. It's so much fun. So
Very
it's
fun.
a free novella about 2 graduate students that I just love. Because I got to nerd out about these graduate students, and it is kind of a grumpy sunshine, very
Okay.
me story of 2 graduate students left on their campus. But anyway, that was a long answer to a short question. But I do think it's important to find the spark, and it's so easy to lose it because we get into this mode of where we need to produce. But if your heart and your soul and your brain and your creativity are not in the place to produce, it can really feel like you're spinning your wheels. And that's where I think it's so helpful to have other writers in your corner, to have things like this where
Yeah.
oh no, we just wrote a grumpy sunshine mafia honeymoon. Now I'm like,
You give someone an idea. Yeah.
100% want to go write that. The other day I read something about lighthouse keepers and I was like, I'm going to write a series about lighthouse keepers. And I sat down to start writing it. And again, that just for me is a way to get out of my own head and remind myself the fun of writing before we get back maybe to the business or the book that's due or the plot points that need editing that I'm stuck
We
on.
have 2 people who are about to be trapped in an elevator together. So
Oh yeah, and they just got forced. They were forced to be married, and now they're going to have to maybe go on a honeymoon to the Bahamas to escape a rival mafia. I don't know. Things are happening.
Things are happening. I like it. All right, so let's pop up our little fireplace timer again. I'm going to give us a little 10-minute timer so that we end at 5 minutes too. So we have like a little time at the end for like final questions, and feel free to work on a new story, an idea that just came up, whatever you'd like, and we'll be here for 10 minutes. I'll just mute myself so you can listen to the fireplace. See you in 10. I try to do all these things at once and then I forget. Like I forget to put the timer and what time we're working on. We're there. I tried to put the fireplace at the right moment and it stopped a minute early. So you can't be perfect.
You know, there's a song I've fallen in love with, and the chorus is "Things happen, it's all they ever do."
That's cute.
Yeah, it's by Dawes, or I think it's pronounced Dawes, but it's a great song. But I love that chorus.
Nice. Well, I went back to a character sketch. So for my last NaNoWriMo, I drafted a novel and I have made it historical fantasy, but in my greater plotting of the arc of the series, I was coming to question whether or not I want there to be fantastical elements in it because it's getting more serious and I think that makes it more trivial. So I was going back and trying to figure out my main character's motivations and what she's fighting for and asking myself if it's conflicting with her cousin's goals. So I was getting some meaty thoughts in there. How about you?
Oh, good.
Yeah.
You know, I went back to my my book that I'm working on now, and I'm waiting on some feedback from some previous chapters in the overall arc, but I just started doing a little bit more with a kind of funny early scene of these characters to sort of establish kind of that baseline for them.
Nice. Do you ever see things that inspire you in real life? Like,
Yeah. Sometimes in real life, and sometimes it's just a moment in real life that sparks something else.
yeah.
Not this book. This one's just off the rails, and it's going to be kind of zany. But yeah. So I wrote a series of novellas that came out in 2022, and they all take place in and around the airport. And so none of those are based on real people, but just going through the airport and seeing how people interact. And a lot of them are about people who work in the airport. And so, like, I think for me, it's more so seeing how people engage with each other versus actual stories. But yeah, sometimes something will definitely spark my interest. I've been moved to write something based on something I saw on TikTok that, you know, sweetened my heart.
Oh, really? That's super cute. Yeah, I can actually show because they're such cute covers.
Oh yeah, they did a great job with those.
Yeah. I can share two things at once. Yes, I can. So yeah, and actually I don't think I had heard of Even When the Sky is Falling, right? That's
Yeah, that was another anthology I contributed to, which was so much fun.
yes.
And Love and Other Flight Delays is all three of those novellas together. But Even If the Sky is Falling is 6 different authors, and you can see the premise there. But essentially, the world is not ending. It's a glitch. It's not real. And you learn that as the reader in the first chapter, but all of these other couples don't know it. And so they're sheltering in place. And it was so much fun. All the stories it was a great group of folks to write with. Mine is basically 2 former honors students who were competitive with each other in college, who are now both back on campus to get alumni awards, and they're accomplished in their own careers, and they're stuck together in their old biology building. And of course, anatomy is studied, sparks fly, but in this very short amount of time, it takes place over 12 hours, you sort of see how they challenged each other in college and what that relationship, you know, could have meant to them as adults and maybe could now. And so it's very steamy, but I also love that idea of like these 2 people who are so type A and so competitive, and so studious, like having this sort of fun moment at the end of the world.
Yeah. That's nice. There's I think novellas are harder to like get into our eyeball space, and so I don't think I'd seen them. But because I do social media stuff for Audiophile magazine, that came through, and it got some sort of audio book award.
Yeah,
and I was like, "What? It's Denise Williams! Yay!" So
yeah, Even If the Sky is Falling, that was so lovely. And one of the novellas, maybe they all were, I don't remember now, but one of the individual novellas was reviewed by Audiophile, and I am an audio person. I love audiobooks.
Yeah.
When I hear my audiobooks for the first time, that for me is a bigger deal than holding the physical book. Like, I love audiobooks. And so with all of my books, I've had to have quite a bit of say in my narrators, and
Ooh. Oh, okay.
I'm super picky, and I've had amazing narrators for all my books. But with those novellas, it was even more fun because there were 6 of them.
Oh God.
So 6 narrators. So The Love Connection has a British hero, and it's narrated by Shane East, or I think it's Shane West, when he's not doing romance, but I love him. And so it was so fun to write this character knowing that's the voice I wanted. January Lavoie has done a ton of my books. She did this most recent one, Technically Yours. She's done maybe 3 or 4 others of mine.
Nice.
Teddy Hamilton has done a number of mine as a hero. He was the voice of Wes in The Fastest Way to Fall. So yes, I am a super fan of narrators. I
Crazy.
love how narrators can bring a story to life. And I got to do the foreword, the author note. They had me record it for The Fastest Way to Fall.
Oh,
I
okay.
got in the studio, and I was doing all the things, and we're on the phone with Penguin Random House and here in Iowa. And yeah, that was the coolest moment. I probably took 32 selfies in the 15 minutes it took us to record that, 2-minute intro, but it was still just a wow moment.
Yeah, celebrating the joy, saving it for later.
Yes,
Totally.
and even if the sky is falling, all of the narrators are really wonderful too. And it's again the 6 of us, different authors writing different stories, but it's tied together with the same premise.
Yeah. And I will just mention, anyone reading out there, anthologies are a great way to like sidestep and find a new favorite author. So for sure, definitely recommend people checking it out.
Also to hit that reading goal, because if it's 3 novellas in one book, you get credit for 3 books.
Oh, okay.
So Love That Flight Delays is 3 books. They're all individually published. You can get credit for all 3.
Nice. Yeah, so you can get your 2024 reading goals off to a good start if you're chasing the numbers.
And some of us are.
Yeah.
No shame in the game.
Yeah. Do you do like reading goals per year?
I really don't. At the beginning of the year, I'm really tracking my reading, and that will last until about days from now when I forget to do it. So no, I don't usually do reading goals. I read a lot. I do a lot of audiobooks. I'm in a book club. I read a lot of advanced reader copies for other authors.
Yeah.
So I never really worry about hitting a number because I know I'm going to keep reading.
Right.
But I do like when I can go back and track and just see what I read. And I'm a data person by training. So of course I have a spreadsheet about it. But again, one has to be good at actually keeping track, and I am not.
Yeah, well, that's why you find an app that you can support wholeheartedly, because their mission is great and they organize all that data stuff for you, like Storygraph.
It is, and I think Storygraph and Goodreads, to a lesser extent, are great. But as an author, I also try to stay off those spaces just because.
Yeah, right.
I'm also a reader, but I don't want to look at my Goodreads reviews. I'm really pretty good about that. I don't look at them, and not because I don't care, but I'm just like, it's not a space for me. And amazing reviews send you into the heavens with joy, and negative reviews can have, really the opposite. And I don't need that for my life. I mean, some of them are kind of lovely, and I definitely have one that said I was pushing the gay agenda and it had too much sex that I framed and put up on my wall. But I was pretty proud of that review. But generally speaking, so I do try to stay off of those. So that makes it harder. But I think if you have the app, like, it's great because it does aggregate all that.
No, I am a reader and someone who likes like summary statements, but I don't do spreadsheets and graphs on my own very well, like formulas and all that sort of back end of Excel stuff. And Storygraph does that. So that's what I use for my like wrap ups, like how many were this stars and which authors was my most read and all that kind of stuff. So I don't have to go back and like count with my fingers, which is what I would have to do if it was me.
Sorry, I spilled Diet Coke on my keyboard, which is why I am shaking my keyboard randomly
here.
No. I am a data person. Like I said, by training, I love spreadsheets. I actually wrote it was a blog entry for the Nerd Daily, I think, that came out with this most recent book. And I wrote about my favorite Excel spreadsheet formulas and how they relate to love stories.
Oh my God. Okay. Nerd Daily. I will find that.
That came from an event I did with a local bookstore to celebrate Ross Gay's new book, his second Book of Delights. And so, I wrote about Excel spreadsheets and my love of Excel and how all these different formulas really do speak to greater social issues and greater things in romance that I adore. But there is nothing more satisfying to me than putting together a great spreadsheet. Like, it is like God tier to me. And so you see that in some of my characters too.
There is a portion of YouTube, or my corner of YouTube with authors, that will absolutely love you for that, and a portion that will be like, I don't know what she's talking about. I don't know this word. It just doesn't enter into my brain. We'll just keep going.
Oh man,
But yeah,
I got a whole
love
thing.
it.
But yeah, I love Excel. I'm an Excel girly.
Awesome. So you mentioned social issues, and so I'm going to use that as a tie-in for the readathon that we're hosting next month, just to get that on people's radars, since we're going to be wrapping up pretty quick. We have Black Author Tuber Readathon, and I'm, not forcing, promoting the agenda of supporting Black creators on YouTube. So we have a lot of friends in the indie author space who are using channels to get the word out about their books. And we also have some authors that we can hear about in mainstream that also have channels. So that's really fun to read their books, review them, and, talk about their books, because technically sometimes their work gets shoved down in the algorithm, and so we want to buoy them back up. So
I love that.
Yeah, I've got the link here to the spreadsheet that I so we can all get together on books. And Leslie says I need to read that blog post. I think it's on.
I'm finding it right now. I will post it.
And so definitely, if you're watching this on the replay, check out our spreadsheet and join us for that readathon next month. And if you want,
dropped that in our private chat, because I don't know if I can load it in the comments here, but
not here, but I will go ahead and post it right now. Perfect. Oh,
I mean, prepare for this to be very nerdy, because it definitely is. But I think I also in there, I provide some recommendations for some books, and definitely some Black authors in there who are doing some great work. So
awesome.
And other authors who I love, and other authors of color. So that might be helpful for folks who are looking for their next great reads, or who just want to learn more about Excel. Either way.
It's a very roundabout way of doing it, but hey, if that's what it gets you to, why not? And if you need something sooner than next month, or you're getting prepared for that and you want to have some fun before then, we are doing Author Tubers Host Karaoke, although I think we might be shifting it to like Karaoke for Mental Health as a more inclusive title tomorrow night, because I have power back. So I will be here for it. Barrett Laurie will be joining me, and we will be doing live karaoke on YouTube. So if that, makes your little heart sing, please join us tomorrow, 5 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Central. And I think reinvention is our theme for January. So yes, I'm coming with some Diana Ross, and I'm very excited about it. So that is what's on the docket. Do you have any events that are coming up that you want to flash lights at people for to join you?
I'm trying to think. Well, I'm supposed to do an event tomorrow in Creston, Iowa, and I was so excited. A bookstore called The Last Edition, but it's going to be like negative 20 degrees here, and it just snowed. Ooh. So we're going to postpone that for a little while.
Okay.
I will be at
Y'all Fest, the YA?
It's not Y'all Fest. It's Love Y'all down in Atlanta. It's a romance book fest. It's new. I'll be down in that in February. And then Steamy Lit Con will have its second conference in August. And I will be there, although tickets sold out in, I think, half a day. So I'm sure there's some wait lists right now. But those were on sale and then sold out last week. So I'll be at those two national events. Otherwise, I'll be at a lot of local Iowa events, which is lovely, which is where I live in Des Moines.
Nice. Yeah, Steamy LitCon. Cynthia had a vlog. She went to that last year, I think, and had an amazing time. So
such a wonderful conference. It was so beautifully organized. The team did a great job. The whole mission of Steamy Lit is sex positivity around our reading and our lives. So the swag bags were amazing. But it was, for me, I debuted in 2020. So getting to just being at an author festival is still really kind of novel for me. I haven't been able to do that much. And so it was amazing. And I got to meet Shane East, and I hugged him, and His voice was on my face, and it changed my life. So
nice. So when you say, that makes me think of like Captain East, which is a character in Austin Land, which is not the same. So I need to go back and look up this name because like it's pinging, but it's got the wrong connection. So
I mean, he does all kinds of books. He did The Love Connection is my novella that he narrated.
okay.
But yeah, he's a wonderful human in general, and just a beautiful narrator.
Awesome.
And he did that one with January Lavoie, who again is amazing. I had drinks with her a couple months ago out in Atlanta where she lives, and she's just kind of as amazing a human as she is a narrator, which is lovely.
Yeah. And I'm sure some of these folks have like TikTok accounts or Instagram accounts that are fun to follow.
Yeah,
narrators have evergreen content, I think.
Shane has a whole fan club called the Shaniacs. I am a member.
Oh my gosh.
Okay. And then yeah, he's on all the platforms. January less so. I think she's on Twitter maybe, and maybe Instagram too. I'm not sure, but a lot of the narrators are. Joe Arden definitely is. Teddy Hamilton is.
Yes, I just followed him a few months ago and I saw one of his clips and like a headliner audio, and I was like, "Ooh, I like that voice. Let's look into this."
Yeah, I mean, again, amazing voice. He was the voice of Wes in The Fastest Way to Fall. He was the voice of Hale in my story for Even If the Sky Is Falling. He voiced Silas in one of my novellas, The Sweetest Connection. And then he was the voice of Lear, which is my favorite character I've ever named.
Lear.
Do you take the man? Yeah.
Nice. Well, I have some catching up to do for sure because I've got all the novellas and one of the old series and new series. Well, they're connected. They're able to be read alone, but like loosely connected in the same.
Yeah, I would say they're in the same universe, but they can be read as a standalone. It's not like action A builds on action B and C.
Right. Excellent. I think that's the most inclusive way to do it, which is very easy for us to just drop in where we are. Just
ideally. Well, thank you so much for having me on. And no, truly, I want to go write this Grumpy Sunshine Mafia honeymoon now.
That is a truly extraordinary string of words to be connected. I love it.
Exactly.
So thank you much, Denise. Thank you so much, Denise, for being here tonight and, following my saga with the ice storms. I'm glad you are warm and safe. I hope everyone out there watching is warm and safe. And you know what you need when you have a winter storm hitting? A good romance. So go out and find Denise's books and read some great romance. And take care, everybody. We'll see you again soon.